This episode of Paratopia is dedicated to Brian Reed's mother, who passed away earlier this week. Brian, our hearts go out to you.
What the world is watching with their ears.
Paratopia. You know her, you love her. You know her as Piglet Shameful on the forums, and perhaps you remember her real name, which is Lynn. She was in the listener roundtable, and what was that, episode 100, Jeff? 99? 99, right?
That would be 99, Jer.
Episode 99, that's right. 100 was Raymond Moody. In any event, her stories were intriguing. She met Bigfoot. She shook his hand. No, I don't know about that part. But her stories were intriguing, and Jeff and I wanted to have her back on the show to grill her more. And I think part of the attraction to her story, at least for me, is the surrounding weirdness that seems to be her normal life. It sort of all fits into the George Hansen, sort of trickster pattern of things. And when I asked her to do the show, she said, well, some of her experiences involve prayer, and she wasn't sure if we would want to even handle that. But of course we do, because I think all of it is of a mold, is it not, Jeff?
Did you say of a mold?
Of a mold, not a fungus mold, but of a mold, of a pattern, of a statue, a sculpture, a mold.
You've been drinking again.
How dare you?
What if I told you? How dare you?
So that's yes from Jeff. Now,
yeah,
Lynn,
I would say yes.
Welcome to the show, and thanks for coming back on.
Well, thanks for inviting me.
So we'll just keep this really informal and just have a chit-chat and psychoanalyze you. How does that sound?
Okay,
and then we'll talk bad things about you once you hang up the phone.
Yes.
Yeah, I guess if I can survive the after chat, I'm doing okay.
That's the way we roll. So before we get into any of your odd experiences, in case people didn't listen to episode 99 and they're unfamiliar with you, why don't you give us some of your just personal background? Keeping as anonymous as you want, not, what you do for work or any of that sort of stuff, but just in terms of your family life and all that sort of stuff.
Okay, sure. I sort of had I feel an unconventional childhood in a way. My father took care of us while my mother worked. He was an inventor, and he was a man that really didn't follow convention himself. And my mother was a little more structured. And I would say that throughout my life, the paranormal has sort of been intertwined in my life. And actually, I really haven't been able to make a lot of sense of it. And I hadn't really read anything. Like, I didn't read any Strieber. I didn't read any Jacques Vallée. I really wasn't aware of those authors until I started listening to Paratopia, because I didn't seek the stuff. I just sort of thought if I read anything too much or involved myself too much in other people's opinions, it would probably end up affecting my experiences a little too much.
Does your family agree that there's a paranormal thing in your life? Have you spoken to them about it? Do they have it in their life as well?
Yeah, but it's never really been identified as paranormal. It's just been sort of part of our existence. It was, I guess, an organic part of our reality. And I mean, some things scared me, and some things have scared me, and I have shared a lot with my family. My brother has some experiences. My mom had one experience. My dad had a few. But it was sort of, if I ever relayed something, it was never questioned and never challenged. And I never felt I had to really overstate what happened because I felt there was a real sense of acceptance within my family.
So what was the first thing that happened to you that you can remember?
Well, the first thing, probably the most dramatic thing that I remember was what I relayed in the last episode, which was being bitten on the leg. That was an odd one. I remember being very aware when I was a baby.
Can you give us a refresher on that, just in case people, people didn't listen to it?
Yeah, I was asleep in my bed. I don't know why I say that. I was asleep, and I felt something sort of around my bed, and I was trying to wake up, and just as I was waking up, I felt a bite on my leg between my ankle and my knee. And I got really angry because I thought my dad had done it, even though, he wasn't there. He was in the living room. And I went out and I yelled at him, and he was kind of amused by me. And then I kind of had to go back into my room, and I realized that my dad wasn't the one who bit me. So I sort of had to accept that something else was there, and that was a little difficult.
And you were how old?
I think about 3 or 4. And
do you remember having a mark where?
No, there wasn't a mark. It was one of those strange feelings that sort of, I don't know why I say it was a bite. It could have been a pinch. I had the impression that it was like a bite, but it wasn't meant to leave a mark.
Can I ask an obvious question? Was your dad in the habit of biting you on the shin at night?
No.
Or pinching you like that, or,
No, he wasn't. I mean, he was a really nice, fun dad, but there wasn't anything like that. There wasn't, I mean, I know it might sort of, it's obvious to go there, but I've really, really tried to look at that experience, and I can't think it's my father. I don't know what it was, but it wasn't like I was replaying something that had happened several times prior, right, or nothing like that.
Okay.
Oh, is that my cue to keep going?
Yeah, that would be it.
Oh, thanks, Jeff.
Come on, mouth breather, get with it. Let's go.
All right, so you were about to say that you had something happen when you were a baby that you remember?
Oh, I just remember being very aware as a baby. Like, I remember having great love from my mother and great love from my father, not being able to communicate, understanding language before I could speak. I used to see really pretty colors on the wall. It would sort of entertain. My mom would come in, she'd put me down for a nap, and I never really cried or anything. And she'd come in to check on me, and she said I'd just be kind of staring off into space. But what I recall from those moments is that there was like this light show on the wall that I was really enjoying.
Do you have a good short-term memory?
I have a horrible short-term memory.
Well, see, we suffer the same thing. I've got baby memories as well. I've got a great long-term memory, but I have no short-term memory.
Oh, thank God. I know. It's horrible. It's just it's a curse. Yeah.
So did any of this amp up? I mean, were there any periods in your life where it's sort of flared? I mean, we always hear about girls going through puberty and paranormal stuff happening around that time. Anything like that with you?
Yeah. Yeah, there was definitely. I started having dreams around that time of my life that were sort of premonition type dreams. How I distinguish them, I would sort of be dreaming, but it would be like I was looking through a red filter, and these things would sort of play out in front of me, but they were highly symbolic, and I'd the frustrating thing for me was having to try and decipher them, because sometimes they felt like warnings. Nothing really bad. The one I did have that wasn't really that symbolic, which I really question still to this day because it was just so odd. I dreamt about this burning barn, this colonial-style house, and there was this little red house beside it with a little lamp in the window. The barn was burning, and a little Palomino pony was trying to get out of the barn, and it was through that red filter. And I was keeping a dream diary at the time because I was starting to kind of wonder what was going on with my dreams. And about 2 months later, I was living in Canada at the time, and I was at this, was doing some work, volunteering somewhere, and I took a little stroll, and it was at the Burnaby Arts Center, and I walked along this little path, and it said, "Do not enter," and I thought, well, I'm going to enter. So I went through, and there was the burnt barn, and, everything that I had seen. The pony wasn't there. The white house was there. The red house was there, and the little lamp in the window. And it was exactly as I had seen it in my dream. I still to this day don't know what significance it had in my life or why I dreamt it, but that was pretty powerful.
When you say a red filter, is it a muddy red filter? Is it a bright red filter?
I don't know if you've ever used a lens on a camera, like a. Mm-hmm. It's kind of like that.
Like a red acetate.
Yeah.
Okay.
At what point, and maybe we're skipping around here too much, but you let me know, at what point did you need to invoke prayer during an experience?
With my friend, Natasha, I can say her name because I know she won't mind. She's had, she's been sort of plagued by problems, spiritual problems, I believe, in her life. And we were high school chums, and she told me one day that she had a hand on her leg. And I kind of cautioned her against it, but she just sort of accepted the whole experience and thought it was great. And then that really amped up for her.
She thought it was great that she had a hand on her leg?
Well, she's a very curious person, and she's very, very open, and she doesn't have the same sort of fear structure that I do. So I was very intrigued by her response to it. She just sort of thought, this is really cool. I'm having contact with, the hereafter, or however she wanted to look at it. Anyhow, that all became very, she was violated in sort of a spiritual sense.
How?
Well, come on, Jeremy, you know what I mean.
No, I don't.
Well, it kind of falls under the typical, sort of feeling sexually violated.
Is that her now? Wait, no.
If you record audio for any purpose, chances are you want it to be heard. You want to attract the largest audience possible who can hear your message. That's where we come in. We're CyberEars.com, a revolutionary internet service that will host your audio files and help you promote and track its popularity. Considering hosting a podcast to the world? We have all the automated tools to make the process as simple and easy as it can be. No technical mumbo-jumbo to work out. CyberEars.com does all the work for you. You record it, we take care of the rest. So don't delay. Go to CyberEars.com today and register for a free trial account. Upload your audio files and get heard. With CyberEars.com, it's your audio on your terms.
Let's back up here. She felt sexually violated. So does that mean that it evolved into something else other than a hand on her leg?
Yes, it did.
Huh.
Yeah, for her it did. We would go back and forth about whether or not she was sort of verging on maybe a mental illness, or I never judged her. I tried to really accept her experience and what she was going through, and I could tell that she was really kind of tormented by what was going on with her, and it became really, really bothersome.
And this was in high school?
Yeah, it was no, actually, it was a little bit after high school. It had started in high school, and then I moved around a bit. I guess it was when we were in our early 20s. So after we graduated, it had been there for, maybe 4 years, and sort of became a little more complicated and a little more depthy for her. And we were talking on the telephone, and, as I said, I wasn't going to say, oh, come on, you're having, this is a psychotic event, or, it's not for me to say. And I said, well, why don't we pray? Why don't we try that? Let's just see if this works for you. And she didn't feel that she really had a direction in terms of a belief system, and she thought that was fine. So I was praying, and there was something started to form on the ceiling of my room, my little studio apartment, and it was sort of a dark structure with little sparkly things in it. And it started getting bigger, and I thought, that's just too bizarre. Like, what am I seeing? What is that? And I didn't tell her that I was seeing anything. And I just really said, you have to separate yourself from this. You have to push it away. You have to reject it. Just, really try being assertive. And this thing started growing bigger and bigger, and I thought I was hallucinating. I didn't know what I was seeing. And it started kind of moving rapidly around my ceiling, and then it went into my bathroom and knocked everything off the back of my toilet. And I just said, Natasha, can I give you a call back?
Well, so was this thing spreading across your ceiling, or was this thing coming out in 3D and flying around, or?
Well, it was. It's really hard to describe, Jeremy, because it wasn't. I've never seen anything like it. I mean, I could see through it, but it was like a shadow. I guess that's the best way to say it. It was like a shadow, and it had very active little sparkly things in it.
Well, can we approach it from this way? Was it cloud-like, would you say? Yeah,
I guess so. Like shadowy, cloud-like. It was sort
kind of amorphous, no particular shape whatsoever, or did it have a shape to it?
I guess if I were to stamp a shape on it, I would say oval.
Okay.
But it kept on kind of expanding.
Okay.
The more I was directing her to get rid of what was bothering her, it was expanding at a rate of my desire for her to separate from me.
And when it began moving around the ceiling, was it moving at the oblong angle, or was it moving the opposite direction?
Well, I don't really know how to answer it in that way, but I'll tell you, it started above me, and then it started to move away from me as it grew larger.
Okay.
And I was
towards a corner of the room or towards a wall?
Towards my door.
Towards the door.
Which was it was quite a small room because it was a little studio.
Okay.
So there wasn't a lot of room for it to move. It's like 400 square feet. But, yeah. And then I thought, like, if it just was the fastest movement, I thought, wow, that's really kind of looks like it's really growing at a rapid pace. But then it just zoomed right into my bathroom. Like, that's when it sort of came off the ceiling and sort of, a regular doorway. It went through the midsection of the doorway.
Okay.
And, based on the rate of speed, that's when everything fell off the back of my toilet. It was crammed with shampoo bottles, just a whole bunch of bottles and things.
Right. Was the door in the corner of a room, or was it dead center on the wall, in other words?
It was at the corner beside my front door.
Okay. Gotcha.
So that happened, and I just said, well, hey, Tash, can I give you a call back? Because I didn't really know how to process what had just happened.
Right, of course.
And I just went and sat out in the lobby of the apartment and just prayed and just hoped that my room would be clear when I went back in, and it was fine. And I called her back, and I had to share with her what had happened, and she said, "Oh, that's really weird. My friend saw the same thing above me when I was having a sleepover at her place." She said she couldn't really describe it, but it was like a shadow with little sparkles in it. I thought,
how would you describe the sparkles, Lynn? Would you say that they were like stars? Did they grow in intensity from dim and then back out again, or was it kind of like more like you dropped glitter in the air? How you just get those little touches of light, otherwise you don't see it.
Well, it's coming to me that you described something. It was the UFO over O'Hare or something.
Yeah.
And it was sort of staticky.
Yes.
And I call it sparkles, but I guess if I'm trying to relay it to you, if I say staticky, maybe that gives a better impression of what I was seeing.
Yeah, it sure does.
That involved prayer, Jeremy.
Well, so what happened to her then? Did it work?
No.
The prayer did not work?
No, it didn't.
Were you a religious person before this, or did it just come to you like, oh my God, let's pray?
No, I've always prayed. I've always had like it's not like I sit in a corner and have, get down on, I'm always praying. I'm always thankful. I always have a prayer going.
Are you Christian?
That's a hard. I believe in God.
Christian prayers? Was it a Christian prayer, or was it just a "please God help" kind of thing?
No, I guess it would be a Christian prayer. Yeah, I guess if you have to try and define it. Yeah.
Okay, so you're praying and she's praying, and it didn't help. So
well, that's the thing is, I don't think she was praying.
Well, did anything help? What happened to her eventually?
Well, she's still struggling with it. She's been to psychics. She's been to shamans. She's been to healers. She's been baptized in many different types of religions.
Has she been to a psychiatrist or a psychologist?
Yes. Yeah. I was going to get to that point too. Yeah, she has. And they've given her medication that doesn't seem to help. She doesn't fall into any particular diagnostic category. And she's incredibly open about her experiences, and she's a truly honest person. So I don't doubt that these things are happening to her in some form or on some level.
Does she have a history of sexual abuse in her family? Or not in her family. Does she have a history of sexual abuse?
She went through a period of thinking that maybe that was the cause of it. Because, there's always that desire to want to find the origins of whatever's going on with you. And I think the first thing to do is look at your family and try and figure out how they screwed you up, or, try and find some sort of core event that maybe is, your unresolved feelings about it are manifesting through all of this weirdness. And she's been on, she's gone down that road, and I don't think that she feels ultimately that she was sexually abused. I'd have to check in with her again about that. But last time I spoke with her, she didn't feel that she had been. And
is she able to keep relationships? Or do men or whoever she's attracted to, they just sort of flee?
She has a very hard time keeping relationships of a romantic nature. She's an awesome friend. I mean, she's incredible. She's highly intelligent. She's a really wonderful person.
Lynn, what does she do for a living?
She's an artist.
Of course she is.
Shock.
Do you remember and this may be a hard one for you to answer, but do you remember what her birthday was?
It's in November.
Okay.
Why?
Well, Natasha, the name Natasha is Latin. It's Dies Natalis, and that's natal day or birthday. And it's usually, that name is usually given to children, namely girls, born around Christmas.
Oh.
It's a reference to the traditional birth of Jesus. That's what her name means.
Oh, that's really interesting.
So I take it that her background was Russian then, right?
Yes.
Okay.
somewhere down the line. I don't know.
Look at Jeff being an investigator.
Well, I know.
My God.
That was pretty impressive.
This is what I do.
So did prayer ever come up again for you in any of these situations?
Yeah. Another one. See, I personally think that God has kind of a dark sense of humor, if I can say that. I was in the same little apartment, and I was having some real anxiety about, the concept that aliens could exist and abductions and things like that, because I was really trying to understand all of the things that had happened to me over my life, and I thought maybe the alien scenario kind of fit. So I was sitting on my bed, and I thought, I'm just going to pray about this because, if I believe in a higher power that's kind and loving, then maybe it'll help me out. So I said, please, I really believe that if this didn't exist, you would let me know, or if this did exist, you would let me know. And so I'm going to now make the oath to you to be calm and not be frightened of these ridiculous things. And just at that moment, that that neon green light that you guys were talking about in the last episode that we had a talk, there's this huge neon light flash in my kitchen. And I just thought, damn, that's not really funny, because it sort of left me with the feeling of, I didn't feel it was necessarily an answer, but I did kind of feel that I was meant to continue questioning.
What made you even suspect alien abduction would answer what was happening? Because nothing you've described sounds like alien abduction, alien doctors, and the sort of thing that I assume, would have picked up on, before you got to our show. You must have read something or seen something about alien abduction.
Yeah, I had a TV, and I don't know, I was just kind of always freaked out about aliens. I was afraid. I've always had trouble sleeping, and I guess it was my way of trying to find the origins of why I was so afraid to go to sleep. I'm terrified of the dark.
How do you feel about walking in the dark outside?
Oh, I can't do it. I absolutely can't do it.
And what kind of feeling do you get when you're walking outside in the dark by yourself?
I feel like the darkness is alive.
Uh-huh.
And I just feel like I could disappear at any second.
Any feeling of, and this may sound a little weird, that you could fall up?
More like fall through something.
Okay.
Yeah. Just like vanish.
Right.
Speaking of the dark, the black sparkly thing, did you ever see that again?
No. No, it was, I never saw it with her. I feel that I've had encounters with ghosts. I feel I've had an out-of-body experience. I kind of have had a lot of experiences, but I've never seen that, and it really felt like it felt like it had an awareness, and it kind of appeared to be a little pissed off. Oh, gosh, I can't believe I'm saying this. This is all recorded, right?
You're doing fine.
Wonderful.
Yeah, you're doing great.
Yeah.
You had an out-of-body experience.
Yeah.
When you had that, did you look at yourself, meaning your astral quote-unquote self, during that experience at all?
My astral self?
Yes.
Why are you asking that question? Yes, I did. Yeah, and I really...
Any resemblance to the black thing on the ceiling?
No.
No?
Mm-mm. Did it look like the black thing on the ceiling?
No. Did it have a staticky appearance?
No.
What kind of appearance did it have to you?
Kind of hazy, and gosh, I really hate sounding stereotypical. It kind of felt glowy.
Okay, that's okay. You can say glowy on this show.
Yeah.
Blue, gray, green, yellow. Any color?
Just kind of a. I don't know, just like the color of, I don't know, pollen.
Okay.
Yeah, that was during a really stressful time in my life. My brother had been sent to the Iraq War, and the first one.
Mm-hmm.
And I was really upset, and that happened. And I came back from that sort of thinking, well, this is fascinating because, maybe we do continue. Maybe there is something other than this physical body. Because I still had the same sense of humor. I still had I was really intrigued with the fact that I could make myself kind of large and then become really small. And then I could shoot across my room I was on one side of my room, and then I just thought, hey, I want to go see my mom down the hall because she was sleeping. And my door was open just a crack, and I just shot to it. I guess it's as close to the speed of light I can ever say that I've traveled.
Yeah, the speed of thought, right.
Yeah, and but I knew I couldn't go outside of the room. There was something preventing me from going outside, and it was very scary. So I just kind of hung around in my room, zipped around, and then ended up back in my body.
Did you have awareness of yourself still in your body as you were astrally out there?
Not at all. I was completely, whatever I am now was outside of my body.
And were you seeing through what would appear to be eyes?
No. It didn't feel like eyes.
I mean, were you seeing 360? Did you have the same, perspective, spatial perspective?
I had the same perspective, but I can't say that it was like, instead of feeling like I had two eyes, it felt like I only had one, which I don't know if that makes any sense.
I guess. Was it red in the same way that visions were tinted red, or was everything normal colors? No,
everything was normal. It was going back to my nyctophobia. I did have a little light on, and the color of the hue in the room was exactly the same as it was. Nothing got brighter. I was just in my room. And I felt kind of mischievous, and I wanted to, go cruise around, but I couldn't leave my room.
How often would you say your experiences at least seem to happen in response to something you're focusing on during a period of stress? Because that sounded like you were having questions during that period of stress, and then there's your answer.
Yeah, that was definitely stress-related. And, of course, I was very concerned about, if my brother was killed in action. That was definitely the focus. So I am totally willing to entertain the fact that somehow my brain overcompensated and allowed me to have an experience that could bring me some calm.
I wouldn't even go with that. I would say, because it sounds like from what you described before, where, you're praying to God and, give me a sign, and then you get a sign. You're praying with this girl for this, whatever it is, to stop plaguing her, and seemingly the whatever it is enters your home and knocks over some stuff. So it seems like from what you're saying that there is, and in fact, I don't know if we'll talk about it at the beginning or the end of this show, but I had a weird experience this last week, which was real and yet was based on the ingredients of things that I had been asking myself recently. And so I'm wondering, how many experiences do you think you've had that seem paranormal but are based on ingredients of things that have been on your mind?
Well, I just don't know what type of percentage I could pull out of that. But let me tell you this next experience that's directly related to what you're talking about. I was going through, my friend was in hospice, and I was quite upset about losing her. And on my way to drive to Canada for our final visit, I was just leaving the neighborhood, and I saw this little flicker in the road. I thought it was a leaf at first, but then I realized that there was life attached to it, and it was actually a little bird. So I picked it up and I brought it home, and my husband was kind of wondering what I was up to, but I put this little bird in a basket outside, and I was just kind of thinking, you know, I'm not going to let her get run over by a car. She can just kind of go through her process here and, you know, not be eaten by a cat or whatever. She's just be safe. So I guess I put her in hospice. She passed away about the same time that my friend did. And when I came home, I was driving. My husband and I were going for coffee, and I was driving, and I had this thought that was directly, I directed it at God, and I said, ha, because I was thinking about the bird. And I said, I saved her. I didn't let you get her at the time you wanted her to go. And we parked the car just as I thought that, and I saw this black shadow go behind the car. And I said, did you see that? And he said, yeah, I saw something. And we got out of the car, and right above the driver's side, which I was driving, right above there was a bird flayed completely open with his guts hanging out right on the roof of the car. And for me, that was kind of a message, or at least what I took from it was, you know, I can't beat death. I can't change things. You know, I just kind of have to come to terms with it. And I can say with a lot of certainty that there was synchronicity there, if nothing else, in terms of the message or whatever. So I don't know how that relates outside of my brain, what that sounds like, but I bet in all of my life, driving my car, there'll never be a very warm, dead bird with its guts hanging out on the roof of my car.
Right.
You know?
Well, again, I'm struck with the question, how do you relate this to alleged aliens? Well,
it was just a form of exploration. You know, when you're left with a bunch of things that don't really make sense, I do believe that there's a lot of possibilities in this world. I can't say aliens don't exist. I can't say they haven't had contact with the human race. I can't say that they're not here walking around us right now. I mean, I just don't know.
Yeah, but I think the interesting thing to me, at least, is that the deeper thing than that is that what you're describing, I think most people listening would say it sounds like either some sort of demonic thing or some sort of, poltergeist type activity that you're projecting through your life, and yet you relate to it, at least on some level, in terms of, or want to relate to it in terms of alien abduction.
Well, actually,
I just find that interesting because
that's not necessarily true.
Okay.
I don't put everything through that lens. A lot of things that I've experienced, I don't say, ooh, aliens. I mean, I kind of have little categories for everything. I think the place where you can have the conversation and the place where the boundaries or the walls sort of fall away about these experiences happen to be on your board. There's a lot that's discussed that doesn't necessarily have to do with alien abduction. I mean, people talk about very personal experiences. They don't necessarily relate it to green men.
That's true. I guess what I was just sort of getting at is that it seems like, well, here's an example of how little green men, how that sort of thinking about it, I almost said paradigm, but I'm not sure it's a paradigm, but that sort of thinking about what quote-unquote alien abduction is deteriorating, that it really is broader. It really is a part of this whole other tapestry of stuff, and that you must have intuited it on some level. And
well, the abduction thing came from, why am I so terrified to sleep at night? And hearing stories about people who are visited in the night,
But again, think about that. I mean, why are you afraid to sleep at night? Oh, I don't know. Because of everything you just said. Which, again, I don't think sounds like
well, I mean,
nuts and bolts aliens. You know what I mean?
I've seen some weird stuff. I mean, I'm not... Look,
I'm saying it's in your subconscious. It's floating around in there to connect all of this stuff together. That's what I'm
sure.
getting at.
You know, you always try and find answers or reasons. I mean, weird things happen, and you try and trace it back to one thing. And I think that's our mistake, actually, is that we're always trying to put it into one category, and I don't think it just falls under one I don't think it is one category. I think there's a lot going on. I think there are a lot of things that happen to just normal people that, you know, are very much out of the ordinary. And, you know, however the person interprets it or whatever, it makes an impact.
I agree, but what do you guys think of this? I mean, I guess I've just sort of always figured if there are aliens from another planet and they, or another dimension or whatever, and they know how to get here and they know more about life than we do, then by default they know about whatever this stuff that seems demonic to us is. By default, they already know the secrets of life and death. By default, all of this stuff. And so once you are in that situation of understanding all of that stuff, then doesn't your existence become amorphous? I mean, you can't even... I'm just saying, even if they were originally people from another planet or another dimension like us, at this stage, they probably would look more like any of this other stuff does to us. You know? That it would all be of a larger ecology that we would understand and integrate into on our own terms eventually.
That's assuming a lot, isn't it?
I don't know that it is. I mean... I don't know. What's the big assumption? I mean,
well, I mean that whatever
do you
they
think,
are.
I mean, think of it this way: do you think aliens would come to Earth and be like, "Oh my God, what's this demonic stuff? That's really crazy." There's a whole other thing out there called demonic realm that we don't understand. I mean, do you think that that's possible? I just don't think that's possible.
I'm not an ETH subscriber, so no, I don't believe in such things, but. And ETH, let's qualify it so I don't get fucking hate mail. It doesn't mean I don't think there's intelligent life in the universe somewhere. I do. I just don't think it's here. Literally. No, I think that I think that this all comes down to the same thing. And I think what Lynn's getting at is we don't know what this is, what it represents, and however that it is perceived by us is not necessarily what it is. And so, you know, you have to, I always ask myself the question is it intelligent? Yes. Is it coming here on purpose? We don't know. Clearly, I think, judging by the reams of information that people like Jacques Vallée have talked about, we've talked about on this show, and people elsewhere have talked about, it's a subjective experience. It's very dependent upon the envelope of the person who's perceiving it as to what they actually see. And so what does that mean about the root of what it is? So, you know, for all we know, there's, you know, these whatever they are, if it's a they, for all we know, it's repeated attempts to make some sort of connection with us for whatever reason. And time after time, they sit back in their lounge chairs and go, Jesus, how do we, now they got aliens. Before we were elves. What the fuck is next? How do you reach these people? I mean,
well, I don't think it's an it. I mean, there's not just one fish in the ocean.
Right.
You know, it's not just all tuna.
Right.
I guess what I'm saying is I think that the multiple fish in the ocean on some level know about each other. That if there are again, if something comes here from another planet or another dimension and they've figured out how to, you know, achieve that, I don't think they're going to come here and be like, wait a minute, there's angels and demons on Earth, but not where we're from? Like, I don't think it works that way, you know? I don't think they're going to be like, wait a minute, this whole life death thing, that still eludes us.
Well, I think we're all, you know, I mean, we're all allowed our belief system. And how do we know they don't have a belief system or it doesn't have a belief system? They're limited to communication with us, or it is, or they, I don't know what to call it, because we're limited. So they rely on symbols, they rely on emotions, I don't know if there's a particular message. I don't know why there's even a desire to make contact. But stuff goes on. Things happen. And, a lot of people who would prefer to say that they're mentally ill or, just put it into one realm, I think are actually limiting themselves to realizing that there's a really rich and diverse human experience. It's a part of the human experience is what I'm trying to get at.
Yeah, I agree. I think there are some things that are mental illness, and then there are some things that look like mental illness but aren't, and then there are some things that psychology categorizes, but they don't know what it is, but they just sort of go, well, like we were talking about, exploding head syndrome on the forum. Right, I mean, there are things like that where I think nobody really knows what the cause is, but if you just say there's such a thing as a syndrome, then you're not liable to question what the hell that even is. Right. It's a syndrome. That's what he's got. He's got that. Well, what's that? Well, it's exploding head syndrome.
Yeah, it's impressive.
So I think there's way too much of that going on with this stuff too.
Yeah, I like that Alice kind of found that. I don't know why I landed in Paratopia. I have no idea, other than I really like the direction that you guys take. You seem like you have a really broad perspective, and you both definitely are curious and trying to find an answer. And I just think so many people just sort of say, oh, I got the answer, and I'm going to tell you what it is, and if you don't follow my belief structure, then you're really missing out on the truth. And I don't think that's what it's about.
For $9.95 plus shipping and handling.
Well, exactly. And I don't think that's what it's about. I think every person has to come to terms with it in their own way.
Let me ask you, so you have a lifetime of pockmarked with weird things, and then you go back and you talk to your family about this?
Sure, yeah.
And what do they say? Do they say, yeah, us too? Or do they say, oh, that's good, dear, pat, 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 or what?
My brother has really interesting experiences, which I don't feel I should really share, because those are his. Okay. Half siblings, one sister in particular, has some interesting experiences, which again, they're her experiences. I don't know exactly what your question is, but when it's, if we're sitting around at the dinner table and I say I went to a hotel and, I encountered a ghost, it's like, oh, well, great, tell me about that.
Well, I guess my question is, after a lifetime of experiences and you sit down and you go, okay, I've had, not just I saw a ghost once, but I had this, and this, and you go down the list. Have you ever had that conversation? And what would be, for instance, what would be your parents' reaction?
Since my dad's not here, my mom's reaction is, how unique and interesting, and aren't you lucky?
So there's no, oh, me too? Yes, dear, that happened to me in my life?
No, she actually only had, she's kind of had two experiences, but one in particular, when she was a child, she had an experience of an Asian head floating beside her bed, an Asian man, huge head floating beside her bed. Oh, no, she's had two. Yeah. And another time she was trying to follow steps to astral projection in the 70s, and she heard a disembodied voice tell her she wasn't strong enough. So those are her two experiences.
What is the floating Asian head, I wonder?
I don't know. She's very interested in archaeology and different cultures and things. So maybe that's kind of, I think she was about 14 at the time. Maybe it was, again, you point out that it's kind of where your headspace is. Maybe that's where her headspace was.
And have these things evolved for you or with you over the years, that in any way that you can see, or is it still sort of just random stuff?
Oh, it's very random. It's super random, and I just try and navigate through it. I accept it. I mean, listening to your... Okay, I'm sorry, I don't mean to be such a fan, but listening to your show...
No, go on, please.
Please. Yes.
And reading the contributions from the posters, and, there's so many really intelligent people that are posting on your board. And they pull from so many different sources. And I personally, up until the point of last April, have never been able to face whatever this was head on, and never kind of took my spear to it and just said, let's rumble, man. Let's just find out what this is. And just sort of listening to all the different perspectives, listening to really educated people contribute to your show, and having everybody come up with different conclusions, but still really being open to the possibility of, this parallel life, or whatever you want to call it, has sort of calmed me down a bit. I don't feel as anxious about stuff.
Paratopia being therapeutic.
Absolutely.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Jesus, they're so scary.
Yeah, it's been great.
Are you married now?
Yes.
And do you talk to your husband about this stuff?
Yes. Yeah.
Is he interested?
Yeah, he is. He's I think he trusts I'm not coming home, like, oh, I saw an elf today, or, a pterodactyl picked me up and took me to work. It's nothing really bizarre. I mean, we were at a hotel in little Eastern Washington place, and there was kind of a little ghost thing there. It was called the Weinhard Hotel in Dayton, Washington, room number 6. And I didn't know anything about the hotel, and we were just kind of taking a summer trip. And we came in late, and my husband went to bed, and I was watching TV, and I was sitting in a rocking chair. And it felt like somebody stood on the back of the rocking chair, and it kind of went back a bit. And I thought, that's creepy, and just tried to ignore it. And then I kind of felt things sort of change in the room, sort of a density. And I thought, well, I'll just go to bed and just kind of tune it out. And I got into bed and got really close to him with my back to the room. And I felt these 2 taps on my shoulder. And I just thought, I can't deal with this. And I closed my eyes really tight. And when I did that, I saw this little girl in a black and white checkered dress with her arms folded, and she was kind of pissed at me. And I thought, oh my gosh, I cannot deal with that. So I just turned on the light and just tried to go to sleep. And the next morning, I went down to the woman who was running the hotel, and I was just chit-chatting with her, and I said, hey, I'm kind of interested in the history of old buildings and things, and are there any hauntings around the town? It's an old town. She said, no, not really. I said, okay. She said, well, actually, there is a woman that comes to the hotel, and she stays, you're in room 6, right? And I said, yeah. She said, well, she stays in your room, and she said she likes staying there because there's a little girl that stands at the end of the bed. And I was like, oh, man. So I went back up to Jason, and I told him about that. And he didn't feel anything. He didn't experience anything, but he believed me. He didn't think, there's no reason to manufacture it. It's not like I have a ghost hunting show or something, and I'm trying to, cash in on this weird fairy tale about a kid.
Right.
And so... And, bringing up the ghost shows, I get kind of mad that they're just sort of callous about these entities that they find. They're like, oh, yeah, I found a ghost. See you later. So I thought, maybe she's hanging around here for a reason. So I started sort of taking the furniture, pulling out drawers and things and trying to find a name on the old furniture. But I couldn't find anything. So, she's probably still in that little room there.
Have you ever had a communication with what you thought was a ghost?
No.
Do you think that this is as personal as Jeff and I do?
I think some things are. I think hauntings are different, though.
So this is the $1 million question about that, which is it a coincidence that you're the one seeing the hauntings? I mean, how many weird types of things can happen to one person?
I don't know.
I have an answer for that. A lot.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's got to be something about the person, right, who's having both personal and impersonal, paranormal phenomena happen to them when other people aren't.
Well, I mean, hey, Lynn, when you were a kid and you had weird stuff, were you analytical about it as a kid?
Yeah. I mean, I always thought when I was a kid that when weird things happen, I'd sort of file them away and I'd tell myself, I'll understand this when I'm older.
Okay. Was there ever a point where you thought this happened to everybody?
No.
So you knew it was weird. I mean, so at that at a young age, you knew that this was out of the ordinary.
You learn pretty quickly that, not everybody's receptive. And I would never call myself a psychic. I don't put any label on it. I think that, with respect to individuals who do, I just don't think it's that reliable. I think it's random. I think it's like the wind. I just happen to get more leaves stuck in my hair than other people.
Right.
It's not something that I think is really consistent. It just kind of happens.
Right.
And
so you didn't put a lot of undue focus on it as a kid. If you were a fish and you heard the boat go by and you saw the hook dangling, you didn't bite it as a kid.
No.
Okay. But as you got older, of course, meeting Natasha and having her in tandem events of weird stuff, that had to pique you at that point in your life.
Yeah. I think when I started to have the weird dreams, like I put a stop to my weird dreams, my red vision dreams, when I dreamt about walking through an alleyway and meeting a man with a parrot on his shoulder. I was like, what the hell does that mean? Like, how useful is this skill? Like, am I supposed to be afraid of the man with the parrot on his shoulder? And I just kind of asked for it to go away because it seemed like it would take up an awful lot of time for me to try and decipher the symbolism associated with whatever I was dreaming.
Okay.
Were you a loner as a kid?
Yes, sadly I was. Yeah. I like spending time alone. I sort of, I had one nice friend, but no, I don't think that my style of humor or outlook really appealed to a lot of the other kids.
What was your style of humor?
I don't know. I just kind of saw funny things. I liked watching people, and I liked interactions, and I don't know. I like gumdrops. I don't know.
I don't even know where to start. When we're talking about paranormal experiences in general, which we're casting a pretty broad net with you. I mean, this is you've had pretty much, it's been a broad spectrum of weird things. Yeah. But here's the direct question. I mean, Jeremy was talking about your connection to this alien abduction thing or UFOs and all of this kind of tying in together. Have you seen a UFO? Have you had that experience more than once, or if at all?
No.
Not seen a UFO?
No, I've never seen a UFO.
Okay.
I look for them, but, there was sort of this narrative, I guess, about the time that I started thinking that it could be UFOs or, abduction or some sort of ancient knowledge being transferred to me through, my alien companion, invisible, who knows, right?
Right.
And I guess I just needed that. I thought, hey, here's a concrete explanation for what could be going on. it's a possibility that maybe I should explore. But every time I did, I just got kind of freaked out, like this idea of something coming in the night and having full authority over you and violating you in horrible ways, and then throwing you back into your bed, and you just sort of left with this post-traumatic syndrome. But then, and I know you guys are sort of done with the topic, but then when I started to realize that a lot of the recall was coming from hypnosis, I was just like, I don't think that's really reliable.
Right.
I think because the things I've had, I haven't had to have hypnosis to remember the things that have happened to me, even though they've been a bit weird.
Right. Sure.
And I think I noted on the board, people who have had near-death experiences have total recall. They don't need to have somebody sit there and take them back. They just remember.
Right. Well, because they're some of the most potent memories, aren't they? I mean.
Yeah, it's a very real experience. It's like real times 10. And,
right. Yeah.
And I think, you both brought up the point. I think Jeremy said, if there's such an advanced civilization, why are they still working with beakers and collecting dirt samples?
Right.
And I just thought, that's so true. Like, what is it that we're seeing? Like, why does it appear that way? Does it shapeshift to appeal to our senses? And if it does, what is it really?
Oh yeah.
Well, I think this is another one of those all of the above answers where I think there is a shapeshift element, and there is, as you've experienced, a answering your own personal inquiries part of it. But then there's also the bad research element, and it's interesting. I mean, I think you could make the exact same case for what the hypnotist is doing, sort of co-creating this alien reality with his client as you can with the reality itself and its client. So I find that interesting. But something actually Carol Rainey wrote in a private email today, I don't think she'll mind me saying this, which is one of those things that just flew over my head, is where are all the female hybrids mating with the men and holding them down and all of that? Why is it all males?
That's right.
All right.
Well, isn't the answer to that?
What?
Because look at who's doing the hypnosis. I mean, it's arrogant, men. And so what do they produce? They produce hybrids that are arrogant men. They produce facsimiles of themselves.
Well, yes. But also the women who do it have been trained by these arrogant men. So they're kind of, if that's pertinent to what you're saying, people who have had these, main fellows as their mentors go off and they say that they're coming up with the same results as their mentors are. And it's like, well, yeah.
Yeah.
It's kind of infectious, isn't it?
Well, I know at least back in the 80s, there was a overwhelming proportion of the experiencers that I met in everything from MUFON groups to doing a lecture someplace to experiencer support groups. It was majority females. Mm-hmm. I would say almost 2-to-1 probably, or a little more than that. Which I've come up with the term of bored housewife syndrome, which is certainly applied to quite a few people that I met. But, I think when it comes to people like yourself, where you've got, you mentioned on the roundtable about the whole Bigfoot story. Mm-hmm. And I keep going back to your dad. Going back to your dad mm-hmm. with, like you said on the roundtable, you had a very unstructured lifestyle. Mm-hmm. And I would assume, would you say that your younger years or your childhood days were, because of his unstructured lifestyle, that maybe yours was about the same, that you kind of fell into an unstructured life at that point?
Yeah. Yeah, it's taken me many years to embrace structure.
Right. Do you find that when you have structure in your life that these things don't seem to get any ground on you?
It's less. Yeah, it depends. I mean, it happens when I'm traveling now.
Right, which makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah. And, it happens less, but it still happens.
Right.
Yeah.
How often do you have unexplained lights in the house?
Well, that's a tough one for me because I know that you do, and I still haven't identified them as such because I don't think I see what you kind of discussed, maybe if I can use the term orb, moving around your home. I see more flashes of light.
Yes.
But I don't know if that's a vision problem that I have.
Well, that leads me to the other question, which is how many of your experiences, whether they be with this light phenomena or other things, have been shared?
You know, that's one thing that I think is really interesting about you, because you do ask the people around you, are you seeing that? And I haven't gotten there yet. I just kind of say, oh, okay, there you are.
Huh.
When my friend was passing away, I saw lots of light around her.
Okay.
And I asked my mom if she could see it, and she said no.
This is as she's, I take it as she's laying there, in hospice, correct?
When she was in hospice, yeah.
Right.
I hadn't seen that many flashes around somebody. And when I held her hand, I could definitely feel her energy. I can't explain it all, but there was definitely something happening.
Right.
Rather than just her passing away. And I know she wouldn't mind me talking about this because we would talk about things, so I don't feel like I'm invading her private moment of passing. But
right.
Yeah, I saw a lot of light then.
And have you seen her at all since she's passed?
No.
Huh.
No, I've never seen anybody that I know after they've passed. Maybe in a dream.
Right.
I haven't seen her. I saw my grandfather. And I felt my dad communicated with me after he passed away, but I didn't see him.
Okay. In what way did he communicate with you?
Well, it's sort of through nature.
Okay.
I was holding my husband and I had a ceremony on the docks where he initially tested his life raft, and I felt it was a really good place because I couldn't go back east for his funeral. I thought it was a really good place for me to sort of say goodbye. And I wrote down on these rocks the names of the people that I knew he loved, and I was going to put them in this mesh bag and with a silver clock with the time of his death, and he had bought the clock for me. So
right.
It's sort of symbolic. But I really was hesitant about writing my name on one of the rocks. And it was a real moment for me to sort of, and I just kind of questioned how much he loved me. And I guess part of me thought, wow, I'm going to live a lot of years wondering that. And that's kind of sad, So we went through the ceremony, and I placed the bag into the water. And, as I said a prayer, and there wasn't any water disturbance. And my husband pointed to the water coming from the left, and he said, "What is that?" And I looked, and I know it was special to me, so I don't know how it's going to translate.
No, that's okay.
It was a whole bunch of little water bubbles, and they were formed in the shape of a perfect heart.
Huh.
And I've never seen that before. I mean,
that would be rare, yeah.
And
wow.
I was just struck, and I've never doubted his love for me since that moment.
And I don't know how inappropriate this is, but...
Well, go ahead, Jeremy.
As we're talking about all of this parental death, just got an email from Emma Woods that Brian Reed's mother passed away.
Oh.
I'm so sorry.
Our condolences to him.
Yeah, that's really sad.
Perhaps
There's synchronicity for you.
Perhaps we'll have to dedicate this episode to him.
Yeah. You know, when you're looking at this stuff across the board, I mean, you certainly had your fair share of weird things. But, and I ask this pretty much of everybody with, you know, stuff that kind of either goes completely outside the box of ufology or completely outside the box of ghosts and kind of just as a smattering of stuff. Do you find any sort, you know, well, I guess the operative thing here to ask is, have you ever sat down and written like a chronology of the weird things that you can remember? And if you did, or if you've ever thought about that, have you found any sort of correlation to any of them, whether there be, you know, time or stress or travel? I mean, you've certainly narrowed down the travel part. But any similarity in the nature or manifestation, right down to detail of what you experience. In other words, that's why I asked you about the astral thing. Mm-hmm. Because I've spoken to a lot of people who've looked at their astral self or looked at their hand when they get out. And they tell me that it looks much like a grayish blue static, and it's very fine. It's very, it's a very high density grain. And that seems to be a big, big thing, whether it be ghost manifestations, alien, quote unquote, alien beings, UFOs, and even stuff that you can't even begin to describe. Like, I know I've talked about the humps in the air that I've seen on multiple occasions. That same thing applies to that. So have you seen this consistency in any way to some of these things that just, you know, says to you this might all be somehow connected as one big thing?
No. I wish I could say that I did, you know, I wish I could say, oh, that's what it is, you know, and then be able to give it a name. I feel that the ghost experiences are very, very separate from the out of body. I feel the, you know, interactions with, you know, synchronicity are very different. I'm just not of the mind where I can say it's all one thing. I just,
well, I mean, I don't even mean all one thing. I mean that there seems to be similarities in the actual visionary aspects of this stuff. You know, does there seem to, like, in other words, when you saw Bigfoot, did it really look like a big hairy guy out there, or was there something just not quite right about the way it looked, in that it seemed to have an effect on it that might be, I don't know, like your mist on the ceiling, that sort of thing?
Well, that looked like a big hairy thing.
Yeah.
I wasn't afraid of it. I was curious. My dad was afraid of it, and I never really thought of myself as somebody who saw Bigfoot. In fact, I've gone into the woods thinking, gee, I hope I see Bigfoot today, you know, because I'm a total geek. And I kind of hesitated to call it Bigfoot. I just didn't bring the layers together. And calling it Bigfoot is kind of a relief to have a name for it. And, you know, then to have a history and to know that there are other people that have seen something like it and what are the similarities and, you know, go down that line. But ultimately, when I saw it, I thought, wow, what an interesting, I mean, I was 4. I reacted to it as I would to any other creature that I had never seen before, like if it were a zebra.
Right. Uh-huh.
You know, I was like, wow, what a neat thing. What's it doing? I mean, I guess that's been part of my frustration, and I guess that's why I sort of started to look at, you know, the alien philosophies or whatever you want to call them. Mm-hmm. Because I really, really want it to just be one thing. Yeah.
Well, it'd be nice.
But it's not. I honestly do not believe it is. I think there are layers. I just, you know, like if we can talk about the ocean again, at the bottom of the ocean, there are certain creatures that live there, and as you go up, depending on the water temperature, different creatures survive at those levels.
Right.
And I mean, that's just kind of where I'm stuck. I just, depending on where I'm swimming, mentally, that's the creature I'm going to run into.
Right. Yeah, brain frequency, we've talked about a lot with, psychedelics, but we talked about it with other stuff as well. I mean, I'm curious if there's ever been any, like I know at one point when I was, we were waiting for our condominium to be built. We bought it before it was built. So I was in a temporary place. I was actually renting from my future father-in-law. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of very strange stuff going on at that place. And as I've grown older, I mean, at one point I said that place was haunted. Mm-hmm. But as I've gotten older, I've kind of changed my thought into the temporary, the out of place, the out of routine. I mean, I couldn't have been more out of routine. I think that's the most out of routine I've ever been in my life. And there was a lot of very, very strange stuff there that largely only me and the little kitty cat I had at the time saw it. But I came home one day and I had a chest of drawer that had essentially like swinging handles on it. Mm-hmm. And they were very floppy. I mean, they were old. I'd had it since I was a kid. I came into the room, and there were 5 drawers on this chest of drawers, and every drawer handle was balanced perfectly upright. Uh-huh. Just you couldn't do it on a bet.
Right.
And I just touched the corner of the chest of drawers with my pinky, and it fell over. So how it survived me walking down the hall, I have no idea. But there was something. I mean, my future wife at the time, saw that. Has there been any kind of physical change in the house before, after, during, not after? That you're like, what is that about? Why is the lamp on the toilet? Why is do you have things go missing a lot? Where, you've got a specific place you put your glasses and you just know that's where you put them and they're not there, but end up, in the dog's bowl. I mean,
I don't have, I had something like that once in my life, but I brought it into my home. Mm-hmm. I went to an auction and I bought a bookcase, sort of a barrister's bookcase. Well, not really. It has 2 front doors and then these 3 shelves, but it's a glass front. And when I was at the auction house, the bottom shelf was up and crammed up against the back of the bookshelf. Okay. And I kind of made a mental note of that and pulled it down. There weren't any springs. It wasn't spring-loaded at all. It was just, one of those old sort of pin, you just sort of rested on the pins.
Right.
And when I went, I kind of circled it because I was interested in it. And I went back, and when I went back, it was shoved again up at the back. And I thought, who here is really fixated on, not showing how beautiful this bookcase could be in someone's home, Right. So I decided to buy it, and I bought it, and I brought it home, and it started clicking. And I thought, that's kind of weird. And then I went to sleep, and at night I would hear it go back. I would hear it, like the bottom shelf, go back. And I was thinking, is this thing weighted incorrectly? Is it slanted at the back? How bizarre. I was not thinking I just didn't want to go there.
Right.
Because I was, again, living by myself, and I just didn't really need it. Then I started becoming really self-conscious when I would sit in the living room because it felt like something was watching me. And that feeling sort of really affected me. I was just sort of hanging out in my bedroom and in the bathroom and just getting out of there. And it would still click occasionally. And, it took me a while to sort of come to terms with the fact that something was wrong. Right. Even though the energy in my place had changed. And I honestly had never heard of a haunted piece of furniture.
Yeah.
I was like, what, so I started calling around just random people. I was living in Victoria at the time, and I ended up speaking to this woman, a psychic, I guess. And she said, oh, yeah, there's haunted furniture. You have to be really careful what you buy, and, just this whole spiel. And I thought, is this thing really haunted? Like, it took me a really, really long time to get there.
Right. Why can't I have nice things?
Well, yeah. I mean, I really liked it. And then I felt kind of guilty, too, because I was like, well, I'm just going to put it on the side of the street. And I was like, well, should I put up a sign on it and like, warn people that it's haunted, or just let them sort of take it and find out for themselves? So there was this, when I would have company, it would click and bang. It didn't like me having company over. And people would notice it. And it sort of became like I became the butt of every joke because I sort of shared this experience with some people at school. And they'd come over and they'd put their hand in the bottom and they'd be like, ooh, it's cold. You could keep milk down here. And
right.
So then there was this scientist. He was studying to be a scientist. He was down the hall. And I thought, well, I'm just going to put this thing in the storage area downstairs. And he didn't go to school with me. He was at the university. I was at college. And we didn't really have a lot to talk about. But he agreed to help me. And he literally, we were halfway across the room, and he said, is that your bookcase? And I said, what do you mean? I don't know what you mean. He said, it's clicking. I feel something moving inside.
Huh.
And he dropped it, and he left. Like, he left it in the middle of the room. And I thought, oh, God. So I still have it to this day. It's actually, yes, it's in our bedroom. It is.
Wow.
Yeah. And a friend saw something inside. But
do tell. Then what was seen inside of it? You can't leave us hanging on that.
Well, I had told my friend about it before he came to visit me.
Okay.
So I try and be, I do try and be skeptical about my experiences. I try and not feed into it.
Right.
Because, you could just go crazy. You really could. So, I try and eliminate all possibilities, and then I'm like, okay, maybe it's a valid experience.
So you think the caveat to this is you may have preloaded him for it?
Oh, I think I did, yeah.
Okay.
For sure. But the thing is, I had to write notes to myself, like, put shelf down at 10:15 a.m. because I thought I was going crazy. And I'd go do the wash and come back, 10:30, shelf up. Like, I had this little list.
Oh.
So I put the shelf down. He buzzed me. I put the shelf down and went to meet with him. He came up, and he opened the doors, and he said, the shelf is up. So I don't know whether he put the shelf up because he thought it was quite fun to, kind of freak me out, or... But then we were watching TV, and he looked over, and his eyes started to water, and he got this horrorful, like this horror-filled look on his face. And he started to cry, and he said, I just saw something in your cabinet. And I was like, I don't need you doing this to me.
Right.
I didn't really believe him, right? But that was his response, and I'm not saying it was a true response. That's just what happened. I didn't put a lot of stock in it.
Did he tell you what he saw?
But he told me that he saw that.
And what did he see? What was the...
He said he saw like a movement, like this like cloudy substance in the cabinet.
Okay.
And I just kind of thought he was messing with me, to be honest.
Was the room dim at the time?
It was.
Okay.
TV light.
Right, okay.
So it could have, I don't know. So anyway, I just kind of approached the cabinet, and I just said, get out of here, I don't want you here. I just kind of prayed and just told it to go away, and I still have it. And
is it still misbehaving to this day?
When I was in my studio apartment, there was a couple of clickings that I just didn't feed. I didn't feed it the energy.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you're saying prayer doesn't work? That's what we've learned during this episode. I was expecting it to go the other way. When you were like, this is going to deal with prayer, some of this stuff, I was like, oh, well, this will be interesting. Prayer made things go away.
I think prayer does work, but I don't think it works in the way that we want it to work.
Ain't that the truth?
Yeah. Yeah, I think it does work, but I just don't think we always get the results we're expecting.
Well, it's interesting that somebody seems to be listening. Somebody seems to be responding.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's definitely some communication going on. Yeah.
Well, I got to go back to the out of body thing again. I mean, you talked about being out. You talked about flitting down the hallway and this sort of thing.
No, I couldn't go down the hallway.
But shooting from one side of the room to the other, right?
Right.
You couldn't leave the room,
right?
Because you felt there was something bad out there.
Yeah.
You didn't see anything bad.
No.
How'd you get out? Did you just come to and you were out? Or
yeah. Well, it was. I was kind of asleep, and then I realized that I sort of changed position, and I started twirling and twirling and twirling and twirling and twirling and twirling, and I couldn't get my bearing.
Uh-huh.
And I was like, whoa, what's happening? This is really bizarre. And I stopped. I thought, oh my gosh. I saw my hand in my bed, and I thought, oh, am I dead? Have I died? This is not good. But then part of me wasn't really afraid. I was like, wow, this is cool. This isn't as bad as I thought it would be. And it was a very real experience. I kind of floated up to the side of my room, and I noticed a little spot of blue paint, and I was consciously thinking, I'm going to check that in the morning to make sure I'm not dreaming. And I did check it in the morning, and my room was white, and it was just a little spot of blue paint up in the corner.
Oh. Now, how did you get back in?
I don't know. I just kind of ended up back in my body.
Huh.
I didn't feel pressure. I didn't feel, wasn't painful. It was.
But there was no big suck back in event that you can remember where you were jolted awake or anything like that.
I did come to wake. I did sort of jolt awake.
Okay.
But it wasn't dramatic.
And you don't know what made that happen.
I think because I got really, really close to the door. And I was afraid of what was outside. And I think once I became afraid, that's when I sort of went back.
And was that only a sense that there was something outside that was not good?
Yeah, but it was like a density I hadn't felt before.
Okay. And you equated that with something negative.
It was negative. Well, yeah. I mean, if I were to bet my life on it, I think I did the right thing by not going out into the hallway.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, $10 million question. Have you ever been in waking state during daytime or evening hours or what have you and felt the same thing?
That dark energy?
Yes.
At a hotel I was at, yeah.
And did you go through the door or walk into the room, or did you just stay away from it?
I couldn't go near it. I had to have. It was when we were in England, and it was in the restroom of our hotel room, and whatever was in that hotel room was scarier to me than whatever I felt outside my room. I mean, it was the most densest, darkest. It was just a really, really bad energy. And I had to wake up my husband in the middle of the night. Say, can we go to the restroom together? Because I could not go into that bathroom. But that could, it could have been an energy. It could have been an electromagnetic energy or whatever. I mean, I'm totally open to having everybody, pick apart what's happened to me and say, oh, these are the reasons. I'm open to it. Nobody's going to take anything away from me if they can prove that these things haven't been what I think they are.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, like David Roundtree said to us, this bathroom thing comes up over and over and over.
Yeah.
I mean, it's, I had it at the condo. I've got it here at the house. You've had it. You had it in your bedroom with the mist going into your bathroom. I mean, why the bathroom?
The water.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing, but I understand what David was saying when you're talking about the pipes and you're talking about the water running through the pipes, and that creates some kind of energy of some sort that, I guess, I don't know, maybe it comes down to the, I have a problem with my toilet being a portal to somewhere. But, at the same time, I think, well, if that's the case, why not when I'm washing my car, or why not the kitchen? I mean, we've got a dishwasher that sucks up 50 billion gallons every time we wash the goddamn dishes. It's
there's standing water.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know. I'm just kind of grasping.
It's really curious to me that the bathroom thing comes up over and over. And yes, I know they're running water in the pipes and all of that. And that's a possibility. I'll go with that. I don't know. It's just, gut intuition just says there's more to it than that to me. And I don't know what it could be, but.
Well, that's, when you think about a bathroom in a home, that is when people are at their most vulnerable, and
that's exactly it.
Their most private tasks.
Mm-hmm.
And if something is yearning for humanhood, or curious about us, or whatever, that's
right.
Probably where we would be observed.
Right. So do you have any idea what it is about you, Lynn?
No, I don't.
What do you do for a living, if I can ask?
I am an artist at heart, but I don't make a living at art.
Okay. Ever take an IQ test?
No.
Would you take one if I could get you one?
No. Oh my gosh, what if I came really low? Only really, really stupid people have these experiences.
No, it's kind of the opposite. Well, what's your nationality?
Irish.
Right.
English.
Okay. There it is. I just want everybody to take note of that, because I got,
My dad was orphaned, so I don't, I can't trace his roots back, but he was Irish.
Mm-hmm.
I'd really wish that I could, because I think that'd be really fun. But on my mom's side, we go back to England and France and the Isle of Wight and Devizes, which is in Wiltshire, which is where Avebury is, and also Stonehenge. And
that's another thing that comes up a lot is the Irish, Celtic, Germanic stuff. Always seems to figure it. I mean, I've been told that, well, that's just the circles you're traveling in. This is the people you're meeting, and it doesn't mean anything. But at least with this show, I get to talk to people all over the world, and I'm finding the same thing. Yeah, and we do have listeners in Japan, South America, all over the place, and it just comes up time after time is the Irish, Celtic, Germanic, Nordic, that sort of thing keeps coming up over and over and over, and I don't know what that's about. Have you ever experimented with psychedelics at all?
Not intentionally.
What does that mean?
Well,
party time in the drink without your knowledge?
Well, I do believe, there are occasions where people decide to lace certain things. And I really don't like talking about drugs, to be perfectly honest, but I'll tell you this.
I understand.
3 times I tried marijuana. One time was with some people I wasn't really familiar with, but we were in Stanley Park in Vancouver. And I was pretty sure they put something else in it when I couldn't stop saying Shazam and laughing my head off.
Okay.
I couldn't stop saying Shazam.
Okay.
I was going through, we were walking, it was very dark. Stanley Park's kind of a weird area at night. And we were at a playground area, and I was telling everybody to watch out for the piano wire because I didn't want anybody to cut their head off and all this really weird stuff.
Huh.
But then I said, we only have about 5 minutes before they come. And they didn't know what I was talking about. And I said, three of them are going to come and one's going to have a baseball bat. And they kind of ignored me. And then I got up because I sort of felt the time was near. And that is what happened. 3 guys came. One had a baseball bat, and they chased us.
Huh.
And I was trying to, like, afterwards I thought, was this one of my dreams? Because it was about the same time that I was having these dreams. But I definitely knew what was going to happen before it happened. And I think I was more in tune with that because of whatever they decided to put in that. So
weed saved your life. That's what you're saying.
Yeah, I mean, well, if I was, if I had been smart, I wouldn't have been hanging out with those people, I guess. But,
do you remember if the feeling that you had on the laced weed was similar to any feeling associated with this stuff, like maybe prior to or going back into your body with the astral projection thing?
I have to think about that because I don't think I've ever really tried to compare it. I don't know. I mean, I really wish I had thought about that before you asked because there might be a link, but I just felt I kind of felt aware of several different realities at once when that was happening. But again, I didn't take it intentionally. So I wasn't kind of waiting for stuff to happen. I was just kind of like, wow, I feel really psychic right now. That's what I remember thinking. Like I kind of knew, it was like I was a couple of seconds ahead of everybody else's actions. Like I was in a different time stream or something, mentally.
Did anybody ever tell you we put something in there?
No, they totally denied it.
Okay. Well, can I just make the notation that they might have been telling you the truth?
You're going to take a lot of convincing.
I'll put it to you this way. I would say, I mean, just in the short period we've been talking here, and Jeremy and I have talked about this before, and I think that your perceptions of these experiences throughout your life, I mean, obviously says something about, you can call it brain chemistry if you want. You can call it, in tune with different parts of the soul. You can call it whatever you want. But I think there's something different about the way that certain people perceive reality or the world. And if you're one of those people with that unique thought process, or whatever you want to call it again, and you intoxicate yourself with something, mm-hmm. then most often you'll get a completely different reaction. It would stand to reason to me that you would get a completely different reaction out of some of these substances than normal people would.
Yeah, I would explain why I never really was drawn to them. Like I don't really enjoy that, and I guess, I can sort of cop to saying peer pressure played a role. Do you
dislike the idea of being out of control? I don't want to say control freak because not everybody's like that, but
I can't say I'm a control freak because then my house would be nice and clean and my dishes would
right. But I mean, the sense of being disconnected or vulnerable or that sort of thing. Is that what keeps you away from? I take it. I could probably surmise that you didn't particularly care for the feeling of intoxication on much of anything. Is that right?
That's very true. Yeah.
So yeah. Well, we're in the same boat there.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, to me, that's like another thing. It was. I've described my mushroom experience to half a dozen people now, probably, and everybody says, "Wow, that's really unique." But it is what it is, and certainly, I've talked to people recently who've taken far in excess of what I did, and got a completely what I would say wasn't even close to the level of bizarreness or visual aspects that I actually got.
How long did it last?
Well, Jeremy's a different story. Mine was probably, I would say, 3.5, 4 hours, maybe. Something like that.
And Jeremy, yours lasted until the next day?
Mine was like 9 hours.
Jeremy ate a bushel basket.
Oh,
So,
okay.
you know.
Yeah. I mean, it was, wasn't it like something 8 hours, 8.5 hours?
I think that's what you had said. I mean, yeah.
It's pretty ridiculous.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, I just remember saying, okay, I'm done now. I'm done. And it was like, no, you're not.
That's the worst, is just sort of thinking, okay, I got it. I'd like to be released from this now. And then it's like, well, sorry.
Yeah.
You're here for another.
But I mean, well, the thing is with me, I mean, you tell me how you feel about this, because this is something I've been curious about with people like us who don't like that loss of control aspect of it. There was a study at Johns Hopkins being done, and I put my name in for it. It was a psilocybin experiment.
Oh. And
the one thing that they had put down in this paper that a friend gave to me, describing, the procedures, what they were researching and this sort of thing, and what they were looking for as far as candidates go. One of the things that I mean, at first I was like, oh, I don't know if I could do that. But then again, it is in a hospital, so I would feel somewhat better about that.
Yeah.
But here's the part that really made me feel good about it. They have escape drugs. And I thought, so I can get out of it whenever I want.
Wow.
And I thought, really? Now that, I think I'd be a lot more comfortable with. Not only is it in a hospital where, allergic reaction, God forbid, but if something like that would happen, you'd be right there with the best medical attention you could ever want. And then if you started to freak, or you said, I can't take this anymore, you could get out of it. Or at least they'd knock you out and you wouldn't be aware of it. I don't exactly know what escape drug means, but all I know is it said there are escape drugs.
Wow.
So does something like that have more appeal to you? Like, oh, I would like to see that, as opposed to taking it in the dark in a woodshed like an idiot like me.
Well, if I were told that I only had two choices, I'd definitely do the second, the hospital with the escape drug.
Right.
But ultimately, I would.
You'd bypass the whole thing.
Yeah, definitely prefer not to.
Mm.
I think I don't know. For me, it's like I guess I worry about how these things do affect long term. That's what I worry about.
Yeah. The one thing I got to ask you, and I know this is going to be kind of a hard thing to answer. Have you ever become so incredibly debilitated by this that you actively try to seek it out?
You're right. That is a hard question.
Because I take it at some point, and I think everybody that has to do with this stuff at some point or another has found themselves going, what am I doing? What am I doing? I can't even take the garbage out. I mean, and that was my rock bottom was, Jeff, can you take the garbage down to the dumpster? No, I'm not going out there.
Yeah. Well, I was so actually relieved when you described that, because I really felt alone in the world with that feeling, because I don't know where the origination point, where in my childhood or whatever was I programmed to be afraid. I live in a suburban area. My neighbors would see whatever happened to me,
right?
But I'm still nervous about it. In terms of seeking it out, I guess this is a personal philosophy. I don't think it's like a pony you can break. I think it has to be wild. I think, but when I have been overtaken with fear, I have tried to challenge it, and I've been like, okay, let's go.
Right.
Let's do this, show me your best. I'm ready, because I can't live like this.
And can I guess that nothing ever came of that?
No, it's like, we're not interested now.
Right, exactly.
You're boring.
Yeah. We'll wait till you're getting out of the shower.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the debilitating factor about it is something that, that a lot of people I don't know that they necessarily identify with it, because I think for a lot of people I just don't think for a lot of people it's so pervasive. I'm sure for a good percentage it is, but I don't know how many people can actually say this became a complete, like, this is all I thought about.
Well, it does. Look, it's a fascinating experience. Whatever.
Oh, yeah.
What's that?
I said, yeah, absolutely, it is. Yeah.
At one point, it became the only thing I thought was worth discussing. It's like I would try and seek out people. Like, I still do. We were at a cemetery recently, and I ended up talking to the funeral director, and he shared an experience with me that he had that was quite personal. And I was like, this stuff is everywhere. How do people integrate it into their lives without losing their mind?
Yeah.
We're trying to carry on with our lives, pay our bills, just have a nice, normal life. And yet, there have been times where I have, and I'm sure you and Jeremy have, lived in states of anxiety that just didn't make any sense to the rest of the world, unless you sort of experienced it. And it's really, really hard to talk yourself out of that and to just focus on normal things, because there's something very intoxicating about the topic as well.
Oh, yeah.
It definitely exercises a part of the mind that doesn't normally get exercised. And once you sort of start flexing it, you just want more.
I don't know if you want more or whether you just get more by flexing.
Well, yeah, and I
think you do want more sometimes. I think you get attracted to mystery.
Oh, yeah.
It gives you that spiritual butterflies feeling in your stomach a lot of the time.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to go back to just one little thing, which is that I think when you call out to it and you say, I want, let's have the showdown at high noon, I don't necessarily think that it just goes, I'm bored with this, or, I'm going to wait till you turn around and go boogada-boogada-boo. I think the answer is, you don't know what you're asking for. It's weirder than that. Because then you have another experience, maybe in answer to that, or just later in life, that is so outrageous or so more powerful than what you've experienced before, that you think, well, gee, is this a bottomless pit of odd mind stuff that you're never gonna, be able to understand? And maybe the answer is, getting back to my own sort of spiritual nonsense of, you're not going to be able to understand it with this mind. You're not going to be able to understand it with thought fully.
Yeah.
And you're asking with thought, come to me and we'll have this showdown on my terms, but your terms aren't the thing that's, your terms are so small mm-hmm. that's not possible. And you don't know it's not possible because you think your terms are appropriate. And I think that's a problem.
Well, I look at it from the aspect that you're also setting a stage, which means some sort of, you're calling it. You're saying, here I am, let's go. It's definitely your terms and your call and all of that, but you're also setting a preconceived stage, which this thing clearly doesn't operate on.
Well, I don't think that it's wrong to do that, because in terms of the body I'm in now, with the mind I'm in now, and the reaction to reality that I have now, I think that's a pretty sane thing to do.
Uh-huh. Because
when you're faced with odd occurrences and it's starting to overtake your life, you really do have to, it's natural to want to try and take some control. And I agree with you that, Jeremy, that you don't know what you're asking for. It's vast.
Well, no, I think it is natural to want to take control. I think it is appropriate. It's an appropriate response to say, because who even thinks beyond, who thinks about what I just said, essentially? Like, I think it takes a real step back to go, wait a minute, the mind that is applying itself to this thing, which seems to be antagonizing me in some way, well, if it's antagonizing me, then I must be able to do something back on equal terms or whatever. You know, you think that your frame of reference and the way you are right now is it, because that's what it's in contact with. So how would it even occur to you that that's not it? You know, that there's more to you than that.
Yeah, and I mean, if you're trying to squelch your fear, that's the last thing you want to think about.
But even just going to the drug trip, I mean, forget about any of the other stuff. If you go just back to the drug trip and, you know, how, I mean, that exposes you to the fact that you can see things that aren't there. You can hear things that aren't there. You can perceive yourself as several different entities. Your personal consciousness will recede into the background while, you know, Terrence McKenna starts narrating or, you know, whatever it is. I mean, to have all of that happen in your brain, which doesn't normally happen in your brain, should tell you that that there's a lot more to what's going on in your brain and what your brain can do than your normal consciousness permits. And so if there's something that is not of your normal consciousness that is interacting with you in some way, for better or worse or whatever, who's to say, that we're only perceiving, you know, this little sliver of it. Yeah. And this little sliver of it is going, well, I'm the whole thing. I'm not just a sliver of it.
Right.
And so let's have this showdown, you and me, pal. And meanwhile, I mean, for all we know, the phenomenon is going, no, you don't get it, dork. I'm not even talking to you. You're just getting some residual effect of what I'm really talking to, which is this other piece of your mind. I mean, for all we know, that's what's going on. And so we're so the dog chasing its own tail. We don't even know. We don't even know that we're chasing our. You know, we don't even know. We think it's interacting with us because it seems that way. But what if it's not? What if it's a residual of something else that's going on, and we just don't understand that? And I'm not saying that's the case. I'm just saying there are so many options.
Well, I'm comfortable with that, actually. I'm totally comfortable with that. In fact, I've been able to get there by listening to Paratopia. You know, I mean, I really have, because I was taking it rather personally, and now I don't. I just, you know, maybe I'm just tuned a little differently, but that doesn't mean that it has anything to do with me. You know, and that takes a lot of pressure off. It kind of, and if I can, you know, I don't mean to have weak analogies, but, you know, I stand outside and the wind blows. Am I supposed to be freaked out? Oh my God, it's the wind. You know, I mean, the wind blew, and, you know, just kind of go with it. That's where I'm at, and it's a lot better, and I'm a lot more comfortable there. Mm-hmm. Well, until something weird happens, and then I'll have to readjust.
Well, that's the other thing is, like, even again, I feel like thought is the barrier here, because even having said all of that, the second that I rest in that is the moment that something jostles me and goes,
I know.
No, you don't get it, dude. That's part of you still being asleep. You know, you keep trying to lull yourself to sleep with an answer about this.
Well, okay, wait now. What is it to be awake? I mean, what would that look like?
Well, right.
I mean, take some mushrooms and get back to us.
What would it look like? Well, I mean, I go back to my I am experience. I mean, what would it be like if I were a person living on that stage and not just visiting it as a state? What would it be like to actually have non-local mind, to be aware of me and my body as well as everything else, all points of view at once? You know, what is that possible? It's certainly possible to have the experience of it. Why is it not possible to live there? But I can't imagine what that looks like. I can't imagine what a society of people like that looks like. Do you have to turn it off? Or do these sorts of questions are they irrelevant because they just are?
Do you think that I just don't think we can sustain that on this plane. I think we're capable.
I don't see why not. I don't see why not. I mean, certainly I had, during that experience, I had the awareness of being in my body and thinking I was dying. So there's still a me sense, like once non-locality happens, then all localities are the case at once, right? So one of those localities is you again, your ego self. And so why can't, I mean, I just, I'm not saying it can, but I don't see any reason for it not to be. I don't buy any of this stuff about, we don't know, there are limitations to the human mind or the human brain.
Okay, I see where you're going. Yeah. No, I think we're capable of it. I really do. I think, but I mean, who's going to hire you? I think.
What happens when you got to pee?
I'm talking about on a grand level, not just the individual, but a society. I mean, my point is, if your little pea brain can do that, then can experience the all, the nothingness, and the all. If your little brain can experience all of those points of view, or if you can leave your body and go zipping around the room at the speed of thought, then why, isn't it crazy of you and me to think that we can come back, forget that happened, have some sort of amnesia about that to the extent that we look at this phenomenon and go, all right, I want to challenge you on these limited terms that even I know are bullshit because I've experienced greater.
Yeah, but I mean,
we have no choice. I know what you're saying. We have no choice, and it's an appropriate response. But it's still wrong. It's still not going to help. Let's put it that way.
Well, it's not going to get us any closer to the answer if we keep on, going back into our shell. Every time we have an experience, it really. I mean, I've always been kind of stuck on how can I sustain it. Like when I explained that one experience where I was kind of transported to another area in the last episode, and I met a being. That was pretty incredible. Nothing that I've never experienced anything else like it. I've never been at that emotional altitude before. I've never been that happy before. I've never felt that loved before. I've never been that unafraid before. But I have a really hard time even sustaining that feeling for more than a blip of a second.
Yeah. Well, we're baby stepping our way into this, aren't we? I mean,
right.
That's the fun, and that's the problem. But wouldn't it be interesting if we're actually making this more complicated than it needs to be, and it's just simply something going boo for its own entertainment?
Well, I think we are still trying to understand our abilities. I think we are capable of so much more than we're aware of. And I think that if we learned that and trusted that, then maybe we would sort of get to a new level. But I don't know what it's going to take to get there. Because as you say, even when something really fantastic happens, we still sort of have to go back to the daily grind.
Huh. I mean, tell me how you feel about this, Lynn, when I say about all of this stuff. I've grown to hate the UFO field. I thought for a while I was going to, get to, ghosts and all that kind of stuff. And I would look at that and I would kind of take myself away from this part of it. But this all comes down to me to just say, for the time being at least, we don't know where the hell we are. I mean, we know we got to get up and go to work, and we got to eat breakfast. We got to, do the 3 S's in the morning and all of that, and go to the job and make the money to pay the bills, to pay the taxes, blah, blah, blah. And there feels like more and more, there's something inherently wrong with that issue, and that there's supposed to be more to this than, and I felt this way for years, that there's supposed to be more to this than what we're doing. And that when it comes right down to it, skeptics be damned. I could give a damn what a lot of people say about it, but the bottom line is there's a hell of a lot of people, both in shared experiences and in singular experiences, that are seeing things and experiencing things that just can't be. Mm-hmm. And that just says to me that there is way more to reality. There's way more to life than we've been led to believe by anything. That includes religion or gurus of any kind or what have you. And that when it all comes down to it, we only can measure and gauge and study what we're perceiving with these feeble senses that we have.
I think a really good gauge is how it affects people.
Oh, yeah.
I think that, if we're trying to find some sort of way of measuring how it affects the world or the impact it has on the world,
mm-hmm.
I think the best thing to do is to talk to people that have had the experiences, not talk to experts you do. I think that's important too, but an expert that's theorizing about the experience has a different perspective, which is
right.
a valuable perspective. But also finding the people and how it's affected them. Has it improved their life? Has it caused strife? Has it brought them to new conclusions? I know a really good group of people to talk to are inventors. Inventors get things in their dreams. It's like this wellspring of new ideas, and I know that they're drawn to trying to bend reality a bit to give birth to new ideas, and that's a really interesting area.
Yeah.
But really, see the impact on the person's life, and overcoming the fear. Maybe that's one of the goals. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, this thing being elusive as it is, there's not a whole lot of things you can devote a serious amount of time to studying except that. So I think you're right there. But Lynn, guess what? We're out of time.
Okay.
So thank you very much for coming on the show this week, and
thank you,
and chewing the fat with us for a while about all this stuff. And I think you're a fascinating, very strong woman. So
well, I think you guys are just awesome, and you can edit out the word awesome.
But I'm not going to.
We're leaving that in.
You're fantastic, and I think that you're taking a really incredible approach to things, and I'm honored to be speaking with you, and I'll continue listening.
Oh, pleasure is ours, believe me.
Thank you.
Hey, Paratopia, guess what? This episode was a little long.
A little?
Well, okay, a lot long. So guess what we're going to do? We're going to do some kind of Mondo after chat, and you're going to find that in the bonus content area if you'd like to go download it. We figured we'd keep the show by itself due to its length. So hop on over to the bonus content area and download our extensive after chat right there.
Yes, it is feature length.
It is.
And hopefully just as interesting. So thank you again, Lynn, for doing the show. And we'll see you in the bonus section of the subscriber area.
Come on, let's go.